Hello everyone, welcome to the Ocean Sound Storytelling Channel. I am the storyteller, and today I am so happy to be with you. You may be curled up under a blanket or listening with your ears on a soft pillow. Wherever you are, whatever the time, thank you for being here. Before we begin with an interesting story, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel, so I know you enjoy relaxing moments like this. Where are you from? Send me a little hello in the comments. I would love to know which corner of the world you are listening from. Now, relax your body. Close your eyes and let the gentle waves take you into a gentle story, a little strange, a little mysterious, but warm enough to lull you to sleep all night long. So, are you ready? Tonight's story begins. The next step. Tristan stirred the sickly green tea in his mug, watching the bag bob up and down in murky suspension. He took a sip, cringed, and grunted in disgust. Far from being satisfying, he thought it tasted like wet grass and regret. He sighed and left the break room, entering the office corridor and pressing the elevator button with the same tired resignation he'd applied to his third cup that morning. The mirrored elevator doors reflected a man worn thin, tired eyes, and a mouth set in a permanent downturn. He tried not to look at the strands of premature gray creeping over his ears. He took another sip of his matcha, forcing himself to swallow, trying not to think of how closely the drink resembled something he once scraped off the wheels of his lawnmower. Sighing heavily, Tristan glanced at his watch. He'd had back-to-back meetings all morning and hadn't felt needed for any of them, having so far only sat silently, taking notes and nodding as higher-ups talked in circles for an hour, while ultimately saying nothing. Just a few more years, he reminded himself for the millionth time. A few more years proving yourself, then you'll be promoted to manager, then director, then you'll have made it. He took another sip of matcha and grimaced, struggling between forcing himself to swallow or spitting it out. It was a few moments before he noticed the old man who had come to stand beside him, waiting for the elevator. The old man looked sideways at Tristan and grinned. Just switched to tea, eh? Tristan forced himself to finally swallow and nodded. Yeah. The old man chuckled and said, "That look on your face, oof, you're a coffee guy, am I right?" Tristan examined the old man's face. He was ancient, likely pushing 90, but he wasn't a senior executive or even on the board. Tristan had memorized all their faces, not really in the mood to make small talk with some random old guy. Tristan just nodded. "Thought so," the old man continued conversationally. "Let me guess, it wasn't your idea." Tristan frowned down at the tea in his hand and said, "My girlfriend suggested it." "Ah, another young pup, just doing as he's told." The old man chuckled again. "It's a shame you don't know how to think for yourself." Tristan bristled slightly at the remark, but didn't want to cause a scene at work by telling this guy off. So he forced himself to remain silent by drinking more matcha. The old man looked sideways at him and shook his head in disappointment. "Nothing? Pity. I hoped you had more spine than that." Tristan turned to face the man, his brows pressing together as he clenched a fist. "What's your problem?" Tristan demanded angrily. The old man laughed. "That's more like it. I knew there was still someone alive in there." The old man poked Tristan in the chest and laughed again. Tristan sneered and turned back to the elevator, wondering just what the hell was taking the damn thing so long. You'll be waiting a long time if you just stand here, the old man said. Feel free to take the stairs, Tristan snapped. I don't mean the elevator, kid, the old man said, suddenly serious. Your goals, your dreams. I assume you have some. Let me tell you, no one ever got anywhere by just waiting. You gotta find it yourself. Yeah, well, no one's told me where else to look yet, so... Tristan replied coldly. And you're just waiting to be told, eh? Want the world to just hand you everything you want? That's the problem with you kids. You think your dreams just come true on their own? Tristan exhaled sharply, having had enough of being lectured by a stranger of no importance. He opened his mouth, ready to tell the old guy exactly what he thought. Then something was pressed into his chest. A folded sheet of paper, bronzed by time. Lucky for you, kid, the old man whispered conspiratorially. That's exactly how your world works today. What is this? Tristan asked suspiciously, his anger suddenly replaced with confusion. He carefully peeled back a corner of the folded paper. It looked like trash to him. He wondered if the old man was simply crazy. That, young blood, is a map, the old man said, pointing at the paper. A map to a priceless reward. I can tell by looking at you that you're not where you want to be in life. You follow that map, and your life will be forever changed. This is a joke, right? Tristan asked. You're giving me a treasure map? What is this, Uncharted? It's okay, young blood. The old man grinned. I didn't believe at first either, when a stranger handed me that thing. It took me 37 years to take it seriously. Wasted a lot of time. But if I knew then what I know now, I wouldn't have hesitated for a second. The intense sincerity with which the man spoke made Tristan uneasy, but at the same time he had felt a rush of excitement course through him. Even if the man was crazy, this was the most interesting thing that had ever happened to him, so why not play along? Okay then, Tristan began, slowly unfolding the supposed map, deciding to humor the man for now. What's this reward? And why didn't you take it yourself? No, boy, I did take it, the old man insisted. Everyone gets their own reward. That map you're holding will guide you to a place that exists on no other map. From there, it will show you the way through the maze. Maze? Tristan repeated, still not sure if he should be taking this seriously or not. Yes, or a labyrinth more like. The map will lead you to the center, where you can claim your personal reward. But there's a condition to claim it. You have to pay it forward. Tristan stared down at the map in his hands. It was so fragile, worn thin, and creased with countless folds. It felt like it was going to crumble to dust in his hands. The old man turned and began walking away, just as the elevator dinged to announce its arrival. What you do next is up to you, but take some free advice. Don't waste half your life wondering about it. Over the following days, Tristan kept telling himself the old man was crazy. A treasure map? Ridiculous. But a part of him was intrigued, even more so when he asked around the office for the old man, and no one seemed to have ever seen him. He couldn't really explain why he decided to listen to the old man in the end, but Tristan left his home and began his search. He didn't tell anyone where he was going. He took all the vacation days he had, then took off. After weeks of travel, all doubts about the map vanished as he found the place it led to. Tristan stood in a forgotten valley as the sun began to fall behind the horizon, looking in awe at the towering dark walls before him. They stretched infinitely to the left and right of where he stood, fading into the dwindling light in the distance and even stretching into the darkening sky. An archway towered over Tristan, a gaping mouth that marked the entrance to this place. Tristan almost expected lightning to split the sky. How could this monolith go undiscovered? Who had built it and why? These questions and countless more swirled around Tristan's mind like a hurricane, but they didn't matter. Not when he was this close. He had doubted that this whole adventure would lead to anything, but there was no denying it now. Tristan turned the map over in his hands, searching the back and the corners for what to do next. But there was nothing. The old man had told him the map would also guide him to the center of the labyrinth, but Tristan saw nothing that would help him the rest of the way. "Find me!" a voice suddenly whispered in the wind. Tristan jumped so much he nearly tore the map in half. He turned on the spot and searched for whoever had spoken, but he was in an empty field. There wasn't another person in sight. "Find me!" the voice whispered again, more urgently this time. Tristan turned again as he realized where the voice was coming from. It was speaking from within the labyrinth, a voice born on the wind that breathed out of the labyrinth's depths. Swallowing his nerves, Tristan took a hesitant step into the labyrinth. The world exhaled. Everything fell silent. Glancing over his shoulder, Tristan's face paled in an instant. The massive archway he had just stepped through had vanished. Instead, he was staring at a section of wall made of flat, dark stones that towered overhead, disappearing into the sky. Tristan stumbled forward and pressed his hand against the wall, pressing hard and breathing fast. "No, no, no, no," Tristan muttered in a panic as he felt all around the wall, looking for a way to get back out, but to no avail. After a few minutes of fruitless efforts, Tristan sat down in the dirt with his back against the wall, wondering what he should do now. He took several slow, deep breaths and managed to ease his sense of panic. As he calmed down, he began to examine the area around him. There were 3 paths, leading left, right, and directly ahead of him. Each one stretched into shadows. Tristan looked down at the useless map in his hands. To his shock, the map had changed. The instructions that had been there, that had led him to the labyrinth's entrance, had gone. Now there was a detailed drawing of the labyrinth itself. As Tristan watched, he saw that the illustration was still growing, the black lines spreading as though sketched by numerous invisible hands. As Tristan watched in awe, the black ink filled the page until the full labyrinth was drawn out, an intricate spider's web with a large, empty square at its center. "Find me," the voice whispered once more. It sounded familiar, but he couldn't place it. Tristan swallowed hard as he tried to wrap his head around what was happening, then nodded once as if he just convinced himself to continue. The map clearly marked the center of the labyrinth, and Tristan noticed tiny dots following the path to his left. Without another moment of hesitation, Tristan turned and followed the directions, moving quickly, but cautiously, into the hidden depths. As Tristan followed the map's instructions, he heard the grinding of stones frequently, and could swear that whenever he looked at the map, it had changed slightly. There was no way of knowing what the other halls contained, but he could hear things lurking in darkness, stomping and slithering out of sight. He was certain they could hear him too, maybe even smell him. He didn't want to think about what would happen if he wandered down the wrong path. There came a point, after hours of wandering, where Tristan's path split into 2 corridors. The map clearly told him to go right, but Tristan felt a strong pull to go left instead. He had no idea what was down that path. He had no reason to veer off the safe route and pursue whatever was down that way, but the desire was almost overwhelming. He took a single step to the left, staring wistfully into the darkness. "There's something incredible down there," he thought, Whatever strange force was calling to him felt as familiar as going home after a long time away. It called to him, not in words, but in a way he could feel, like a thought he didn't remember having, a memory he'd never lived. But it was as dark as any other path, and utterly, deathly, silent. Despite this, Tristan could almost swear the air felt warmer down that path. Tristan took another step forward, dreaming of what wonders might be that way. "Find me," the voice whispered again, louder. Tristan snapped out of his dreamlike state. He turned and hurried along the path the map told him to go, already forgetting about the alluring alternative route that had called to him. Tristan lost track of how long he had been walking, though it felt like days. He rounded another bend and saw the infinitely large hall widen, revealing a bright silver light. Tristan gasped slightly as he realized this was the center of the labyrinth. He'd made it. Stumbling forward, Tristan fell to his knees on the grass before a raised platform that marked the center of the maze. Wiping the sweat from his eyes, Tristan glanced around, taking in his unremarkable surroundings. The only thing in the courtyard to see was the platform in front of him and the tall, shining object standing atop it. The light seemed to emanate from the object itself. It had an ornate frame made of silver, which twinkled enticingly. The frame held a simple, full-length mirror. Tristan stared up at the mirror with growing confusion. Was this it? This was the prize? "Find me," the voice whispered again suddenly, this time with much more insistence. Tristan flinched at the sound, as it was louder than ever before, and it sounded as if it came from the mirror. This time, now he was so close, Tristan recognized the voice. It was his own, speaking out of the mirror with urgency. The hairs on his arms and the back of his neck stood on end as Tristan stared with wide eyes at the mirror. The surface seemed to shimmer like a small pond, reflecting the light of a full moon. Tristan slowly moved closer, unblinking as he climbed onto the stone platform and stepped in front of the mirror. When he looked at his reflection, Tristan gasped. Where his reflection should have been, there was instead a strange yet familiar face. The old man from the office, who had encouraged Tristan on this adventure, stood in the mirror, looking out at Tristan with a hard and hungry gaze. "Hey, young blood, you found me," the old man said with a grin. He spoke with Tristan's voice. "What? How?" Tristan stammered. What's happening?" Tristan suddenly felt an ice-cold sensation grip his chest. He gasped from the shock of it and clutched a hand to his heart as he stumbled, almost falling to his knees. Glancing up, he saw the old man in the mirror begin to change. His white hair began to fill with color, becoming light brown and thick. The wrinkles on his face began to fade, and his skin became smooth. Tristan looked down at his hands, and his breath caught in his throat. His skin was shriveling before his eyes, the color draining fast, his fingers curling like brittle twigs. His veins pressed against thin and papery skin, his hands weak and trembling. "Help!" Tristan croaked, looking up at the old man in the mirror. But the old man didn't look old anymore. As Tristan stared, finally falling to his knees as his legs suddenly became too frail, he saw that the old man had become more youthful in only moments, becoming decades younger. What truly horrified Tristan, though, was the old man's new youthful face. It was his own. Tristan reached up and touched his face with trembling fingers. He felt his cheeks had hollowed out, and the skin around his neck and jawline seemed to hang loose from his bones. "Sorry, young blood," the man in the mirror said with Tristan's voice, now wearing Tristan's face. You should have looked for yourself. The road not taken. Am I right? Tristan felt a sudden invisible force begin to pull him towards the mirror. He screamed and clawed at the stone platform beneath him, trying desperately to find something to grab hold of. Tristan felt himself being dragged towards the mirror, and he screamed even louder, his eyes bulging out of his suddenly ancient face. He tried to crawl away, but the invisible force was too strong, and his now aged body too weak. Looking back, Tristan stared in horror as his feet touched the mirror, but instead of hitting glass, they simply vanished inside, as if he had sunk his feet into a dark ocean. Screaming even louder, Tristan thrashed and tried to pull himself free. He desperately tried to grab hold of something. He dug his fingers into any crack in the stones he could find. His fingernails snapped off as he was dragged with irresistible force, leaving thin trails of blood on the stone as he continued to claw for help. The man in the mirror, who now looked exactly like Tristan had, watched as Tristan slowly sank into the mirror. Tristan screamed the whole while, thrashing and clawing at the ground, as first he sank into the mirror up to his knees, then his waist. Tristan still screamed and flailed when he was in up to his chest. Finally, the screaming stopped as Tristan's head vanished into the mirror, though one hand still protruded through the mirror, bloody and frail, searching wildly for something to grab onto, until even that had gone. Once the labyrinth's courtyard was silent once more, the man who had taken Tristan's visage pressed his hands on his side of the mirror and pushed, emerging easily from the mirror and stepping out into the cool air. He turned around and looked back into the mirror, admiring his reflection. With a smirk, the man smoothed out his new hair. He then looked down at the ground and saw the ancient map. With a grin, the man reached down and picked it up and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he turned and walked away, whistling casually as he vanished into the darkness. Diary of a Serial Killer. How might one endure the silent and secluded nature of winter? Be the bear. Enter a deep cave. And dream, dream, dream. Jacqueline Suskin. I probably shouldn't be writing this, but oh fucking well. When the most precious thing lodged in your heart is ripped out and crushed by an unthinking alcoholic asshole driving with a revoked license, you do things, unimaginable things, and not just burying your beloved 8-year-old son, which was not on my shitty life bingo card, obvs, but life wasn't shitty before. The word should be capitalized. Before. No, better yet, the before, because now life was rent in two, forever separated by the gaping maw of rage. The before and the after. A fissure of overwhelming grief that quickly cracked, allowing the steaming, boiling lava to emerge from her core. Oh, he would pay. That drunken dickhead. His money won't protect him. Not from me. They gave her the code name Mama Bear, but he never imagined that she was holed up in a cave. On a hunch, he came out to the Pennsylvania woods at night, alone. Common sense and the FBI handbook would label his actions reckless at best and suicidal at worst, but he didn't fear for his safety. Mama Bear targeted a certain type of prey. Except for being a male, he didn't fit her profile. Funny. They were both profilers. October snuck up behind him, picking up the crisp air, tossing it around. Playing offense, it switched tactics, threw it toward his face, temporarily snatching his breath. He continued to climb, quiet, crunching under his boots, allowing the patches of clearing and the light of the frosted full moon to guide his steps. He'd reach the cave no matter what, so the easy way was the best way. He put his hand in his front pocket, felt the crumpled page of a diary. The paper crinkled like the fallen leaves underfoot. It was mailed to him at his office. This one and the other entries. He had the sense to turn in the others, but not this one. Well, most of the others. She vowed to herself that she would abstain from killing for a month. Or so she wrote. By his accounts, it was day 30. He hoped her undated entry referred to October. At least he would have a day, one day. It was easier than I thought. I would say too easy. But that motherfucker mowed down my baby like a shirtless, beer-bellied jickoff, hurrying to cut the grass before the Buccos game. Maybe it shouldn't be hard. Justice shouldn't be hard. Not in the semblance of a fair world. Leaves skittered and scurried around his legs, tumbling over each other like playing squirrels. He stopped, inhaled deeply. He loved the smell of fall, that last exhale of trees mixing with ripe decomposition. I'm so glad I live in a world of Octobers. He smiled at the memory of his sister, quoting Anne Shirley. Not so long ago, his smile fell. Not so long ago, yet forever ago. Tragedy has a way of altering time, elongating some parts and compressing others. He looked up through the lattice of bare limbs, a web of gnarled fingers, the indigo sky stitched with rhinestones. Did the stars foretell it? It was the mutable signs of the zodiac: Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, Pisces, BTK, Dahmer, Bundy. The ones born at the end of a season, not in the middle, like the fixed signs. Like Scorpio. Like her, you'd think one was enough. But it wasn't. I realized AA, alcoholic asshole, was just one of many. Sure, I settled my score. But what of the other moms? So many blights, diseases walking the earth, infecting others with their cruelty, their carelessness, their capriciousness. Someone had to bring order, just like Melville Dewey did to book classification. Sewn to 99, he considered turning around to walk back down the hill. He turned, but didn't move. In the distance, the twinkling lights of downtown Pittsburgh weaved a terrestrial constellation of bridges, one-way traffic, and sundry skyscrapers. The Steel City, just like its people. Metal backbones, gritty guts, and honest hearts. He craved a sandwich from Primanti's. Any sandwich. That was the last time he saw her. At Primanti's, the original one. He wasn't one to second-guess himself. His mom drummed it into their heads from the cradle. Trust self first, last and only. First, last, only. Thanks to the internet, and social media, it's not hard to find someone or their misdeeds. What was once relegated to a diary like this is now vomited onto Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for all to see. Many lap it up, probably because it makes them feel less uncomfortable about their own stupid decisions and meaningless lives. Here for the mindless braggart. Many blowhards make for less research when it comes to this side gig. He cracked his neck, onward and upward, one foot in front of the other, crunching leaves, whipping wind, snapping twigs. Up he climbed. He was getting close. His hand reached towards his front pocket. Again, he read the page dozens of times, just like the rest. He couldn't help it. Just touching the decal-edged deanery page brought clarity and understanding. He had to find her first. Could it be that easy? I think this might be my last entry. I knew it was a bad idea. No, make that bad idea to write things down. But writers write. Fish swim, birds fly, dogs bark. Writers write. And mama bears? Well, unless you're bent from birth, looking at you, mutable signs. No one sets out to be a killer. Or, as I like to differentiate, a remover. Scrooge, Dickens, had it partly right. Decrease the surplus population. He just needed to add of assholes. Decrease the surplus population of assholes. Dangerous, foul, hollow assholes. He neared the ridge. He was getting close. He pulled out the wrinkled diary page. He couldn't help it. The moon illuminated the page, but he couldn't make out the words. Strange glyphs, occultic squiggles, just like those found on the astrological charts she used to interpret. Meaningless symbols to the untrained eye, but metaphysical gold to the mystic. He didn't need to be able to read the entry. He had it memorized, the cave. He could see the entrance. Dark, yawning, an inky maw, just like her rage. He reached into the other pocket for his flashlight. She beat him to it. Her flashlight shone on the ground ahead, so as not to blind him. Hey, sis. Hey, bro. What took you so long? The gingerbread cookies. The gingerbread cookies. Let's go downstairs and bake some cookies, like Mother used to make. The warm smell sits right at home in your nostrils, invading them like wild axe murderers, hacking and slashing their way through endless miles of human bodies that stand in the way of their inhumane, carnal desires. Shh, but that's too dark. It's Christmas, after all. So let's go downstairs and bake some cookies, like Mother used to make. One step, then two. Ooh, isn't this great? You've never baked gingerbread cookies before? Oh no, because you always thought that you would never be able to make them oh so good, like Mother used to. What did she say she made them with? Some kind of special ingredient. What was it? Was it sugar and spice and everything nice? Was it love? That special ingredient that every mother cooks with because you are their extra special little kid? Oh my, this is exciting. Your heart hammers against your rib cage as you set the oven to... Oh, you don't know what to set the oven to. You've never made these before. Probably 300 will be good. You bend down, spin the dial. But what's that? What the heck? There's already a baking tray in there. You take it out, confused. On it, there's a set of perfectly cut gingerbread men. They wear little black tuxedos with white buttons. Their smiles expose endless rows of sharpened, white teeth. And their wide green eyes watch you intently with their white pupils. In the center, one of them stares right at you, holding a folded up note in its tiny dough hand. You snatch it from him, not caring about the little man's feelings. To my little boy, my oh my, I can't believe how the years have passed. It seems like just yesterday that whatever secret deity governs this universe sent me to my untimely punishment beneath the earth's soil. I know, I was always so poetic, right? Now enjoy these cookies. I hope they taste just like how Mommy used to make. Love, Mother, Ding. Apparently, 10 minutes pass while you read that short letter. But to be fair, you don't read it once. Do you now? You read it time after time until the words start doing tangos in your head as they spin spider webs around one another. Now, after it dings, you're supposed to put the cookies back in and start the baking. Mother said, "How hot do you bake them?" You asked. "Hot, very hot," Mother said. "But don't they not like being so hot?" "Oh, these little guys won't mind at all," Mother said. She slid the tiny men into the 300-degree heat chamber. She smiled. There was really nothing to it. Nothing to it. Well, there's nothing to it, you think, as you slide the baking tray in, and as the minutes tick by, their faces change. No more are the artificial smiles plastered on by a woman who would ruthlessly murder them. Now are the faces of men who know their deaths are coming. Smiles that slowly flatten in the corners as 3 minutes turn to 4, 5 minutes to 6, until the red frosting of their mouths fall clean off, and they can't shout for help. Just as you couldn't call the ambulance when you're there, Mother started clutching her heart and breathing heavily, minutes after she slid the baking tray filled with small people into the oven for the final time, yelling for you to get the phone, to get up, to do something, and not just sit there as the people cooked in their torture chamber, and then they come alive. One of them pokes its head up, its blank eyes staring into your heart. It's lifeless, dull, unknowing of the infernal fire around it. Like you on that fateful night, not knowing that Mother will soon be gone for good. It looks at you, and then it stands on its two stubby legs, stumbling as it gets up. It walks to the edge of the baking tray, carefully navigating around its still dead, unconscious friends as they lie down, their backs against the aluminum's sun-hot surface. It looks its friends in the eyes, and maybe it thinks, I'm sorry that I'm here and you're not. And then steps over the edge, falling down into the oven's fiery, incomprehensible bottom. Clunk. Mother? You asked, your body shaking all over. Why was she on the ground? Why were her eyes closed? She may have been asleep for all you knew. Maybe she was. Maybe. And then they all stand up. They look like an army, all dressed in their uniform suits. One of them peers down and looks at its friend, all dismembered and burned on the oven's floor. It looks more like charcoal than a body. They form a single file line in the middle of the tray, a gingerbread snake, if you will. And one by one, each of them takes turns taking suicidal leaps off the edge. And one by one, you catch their faces as they take their fateful falls. Stop crying, kid, they all say. Mother will be okay. Clunk, clunk, clunk. The gingerbread charcoal pile grows and grows until it is a small mountain. In it, you see a face. Mother. And she smiles the gingerbread smile, looking at you. And you can't tell if it is a smile of relief or a smile of scorn. But it doesn't matter. Your mother's smile is the thing you have always wanted the most. And if this was the way you got it, then so be it. But that smile rang hollow, now devoid of any meaning, any life. An eternal reminder that Mother is gone, and who's to blame for that? And yet, you bake those cookies every year, forgetting that you tried the year before because the waves of memory forces their dark underbellies to recede. And every year, you hope that they taste like how Mother used to make. Elf off the shelf. From the beginning, there had only ever been one rule. Don't let anyone see you move. But after what I saw tonight, I was afraid I was going to have to break that rule. The Duncans' house was full of people. From inside Mrs. Mitchell's purse, I carefully peeked out through the open zipper and saw dozens of recognizable faces. People who had come over to pick up Oliver and Squier's friends over the years. They were all laughing and eating and drinking merrily, despite Christmas having already passed. This I knew, because Mrs. Mitchell had already put me away for the season, which made it even more exciting when she had come back to retrieve me again so soon. Everyone was dressed festively in gold, green, and red. The Christmas tree was still brightly shining, and stockings still hung on the mantel above a lit fireplace. Jingle tunes buzzed across the room, and the smell of spiced cider simmered about. As I scanned the festive room, delighting in all its magic, I spotted a familiar face. But it was not just any face. No, this face looked quite like mine. So much like mine. In fact, I was certain it was mine. But was it possible? Another one of us had been granted access to such an exclusive event after Christmas? What were the odds? It took all my training and discipline, much like the effort I'd put forth when Mr. Mitchell accidentally dropped me in the toilet a few years back, not to call out and wave to my North Pole brother. Our mission had always been deemed a solo one. We'd known from the start that once we were sent off, it would be unlikely for us to see another of our kind again. Instead of calling out, I admired my fellow soldier for his composure and his stillness. His Mr. and Mrs. had him out for all to see. Not that we weren't used to being put on display. That was a rather big part of our job. But never had any of us, so I'd thought, been brought to an event like this. I imagined he was as gleeful and giddy about the whole thing as I was. But from where I watched, you'd never be able to tell. The sign of a strong soldier, indeed. Suddenly, a loud clinking sound echoed through the room. With a tap, tap, tap of his glass, Mr. Duncan had silenced the bustling crowd. Good evening, everyone. I'm so delighted you're all here, he bellowed. I'm pleased to welcome you to our 3rd annual Elf Off the Shelf ceremony, where we, dedicated and loving parents, get to liberate ourselves from this torturous and time-consuming holiday tradition now that our children have outgrown their childish beliefs in the magic of Christmas. A loud cheer erupted across the room, but I didn't understand what they were cheering about. Liberate themselves? What holiday tradition? Tonight, we have 2 families who will be liberated. The Howberries and the Mitchells. Please, give these lovely couples a congratulatory round of applause for their long years of shelving their elves. Another roar rose across the room, and it was then that I realized why Mrs. Mitchell had brought me here. Suddenly, I felt heavy. Heavier than I felt on the days when Mrs. Mitchell unboxed me, having grown stiff after months of storage. Heavier than Mr. Mitchell when he accidentally sat on me. I dropped down below the zipper of the purse, letting the darkness and the realization consume me. They've come to liberate themselves from me. But what did that mean? I heard Mr. Duncan start talking again, so I lifted my head up out of the zipper. Would either of you like to go first? Mr. Duncan stared towards Sarah Halberry on the other side of the room, and just as he was about to look in my direction, Sarah cried out, "I would!" Her hand was raised and flailing. Her enthusiasm stung, and I hoped Mrs. Mitchell would not be so thrilled to part from me. Surely she wouldn't be, right? I snuck a peek at her face, but it was unreadable. Her eyes were glued on Sarah, who clutched my twin, Polly, between her fingers. Still, he did not flinch. What are they going to do with him? Chuckling at her enthusiasm, Mr. Duncan said, "Well, come on up here, darling. Bring old Polly with you for everyone to see." With Sarah now at Mr. Duncan's side, he began, "Well, Sarah, I can tell you're excited to get on with it, but we've got a few things to get through before we say goodbye to little Polly. Tell us, you dedicated how many years to this little guy? 17 years? Now, Sarah was holding Polly displayed on the palm of her hand, oscillating her arm from left to right to show the whole room his face. Whoa, 17 years? You must have started right when these little guys came out, huh? Sarah nodded proudly, but her eyes seemed to say something darker, nearly bulging out of her head. I sure did. Well, that's just fantastic. Really, really fantastic. So, let's see here, huh? Can you tell me one of your favorite memories with Polly? Mr. Duncan asked. My favorite memory. Sarah stopped turning and pulled Polly closer to herself, inspecting him. I noticed her face soften as her memory scanned the past, and I couldn't help think about my own favorite memory with the Mitchells, remembering the time she moved me into the fridge. It had been a cold night in there, but when Oliver found me in the morning, clutching an empty pickle jar, his childish giggles warmed me right up. And when he and Schuyler told Mrs. Mitchell that I'd climbed into the fridge and ate all the pickles, Mrs. Mitchell pretended she knew nothing about it. That was the moment I fell in love with the Mitchell family. And that was why I was having such a hard time understanding why the Mitchells were planning to get rid of me. We were part of their families, didn't they? See that? I guess it would have to be the time I wrapped one of his legs with tissue paper and wrote a little sign next to him that said, "In recovery. I'll be healed in 3 days." Ugh, it was such a relief not to have to move him for half a week. The room exploded with more applause and cheering. I'd remembered when Mrs. Mitchell had done something similar, setting me up on a small towel underneath a houseplant. Her note had said that I was on a vacation and that I'd be back the next day. I'd appreciated the break. Having to hold still in all sorts of poses around the house is not exactly easy. But I'd thought she was doing it to relieve me, a kind reward for all my hard work. Very creative, Sarah. And those of us who are still shelving our elves certainly have a lot to learn from your innovative ideas, don't we? Now, care to indulge us in your worst memory with Polly? We like to end on a bad note, as it tends to make the final goodbye a little easier. Mr. Duncan chuckled. Something about the way he said final goodbye made me uncomfortable, and Mrs. Halberry's sinister smile only made me feel worse. The worst memory with Polly? I watched as she squeezed Polly in her hands, and it felt as if I were the one between her tense grip. Now that's easy. The pause in her words held the room nearly silent, save for the crackling of the fire. It was not like the magical silence of stockings waiting to be filled by Santa on Christmas Eve. Rather, it was full of darkness. I couldn't take my eyes off of Mrs. Halberry and poor Polly, so helpless in her hands, and then he wasn't in her hands anymore. I'd barely heard Mrs. Halberry say all of it before I saw Polly soaring in midair towards the fireplace, his smile brightly intact as he was flung into the flames. I watched, speechless, horrified, trembling, as Polly landed amidst the blazing inferno. The fire popped and bloomed as it devoured him, engulfing his hat and body instantly in a vicious heat. My eyes begged me to make it stop, but I couldn't look away. I wanted to scream, no, and to leap out of Mrs. Mitchell's purse and lunge to Polly's rescue, but I was frozen in my terror. Why was nobody doing anything? Why did nobody stop that wretched Mrs. Halberry? How could they let? That's when the sounds of celebration finally registered. They were cheering. They were whooping and hollering. I peeked a glance at Mrs. Mitchell and almost fainted at the sight of her. She was clapping, smiling even. What was this party of horror? Who was this woman I had dedicated my existence to? This was certainly not the Mrs. Mitchell I knew. This was, well done, Mr. Duncan guffawed, patting Mrs. Halberry on the shoulder. Guess you were too eager to wait for the formalities, huh, Sarah? Feels good, doesn't it? She was jumping up and down and clapping next to him, a smile as grand as a child's on Christmas morning. Monster. She was a monster. All right, dear. The whole party thanks you for your contribution and your entertainment. Why don't you go join Paul? And we'll invite the Mitchells up here for their liberation, shall we? If my heart had been working, it wasn't anymore. I dropped back into Mrs. Mitchell's purse, unsure if I had the discipline to conceal my terror. Somewhere inside me, I knew the truth, but I couldn't fight my denial from at least trying. Would the Mitchells really kill me? Mrs. Mitchell's hand found me and pulled me from my dark haven. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Not like how it does on Christmas to assist Santa's impossible task, but like the sensation of fear, where every minute movement and sensation feels important because you're unsure if it will be your last. I had hoped all of it would be revealed as a dream, but as I rose out from the zipper, I saw the same malevolent faces, all of them staring hungrily in my direction. I'd had no context for such evils, had not even fathomed such perversities could exist around Christmas. And yet, there I was, the target of a ruthless and angry mob of parents. Mrs. Mitchell was quicker and peppier than I'd expected her to be, scurrying towards the front of the fireplace, eager for her turn at murderous betrayal. I did the only thing I knew how to do, the only thing I'd been trained to do. I remained still, sitting poised and cheerful in her hands as she showed me off to the pack of wolves like a sliced Christmas ham. This is Skipper. We got him when our oldest was 2.5, so he's been a tradition in our home for nearly 14 years. I was so relieved when Skylar told me she no longer cared for the stupid thing. Gasp. What an awful thing to say. Carla told me about this little ceremony she conjured up a few years ago, and since then, I just couldn't wait for my day to come. A murmur was rising in the crowd when Mr. Mitchell made his way to Mrs. Mitchell's side. He wrapped his arm around her waist and said, "Oh, come on, dear. You're not even a little sad about it. It's the end of an era." People snickered, and Mr. Mitchell's smile grew wide. I recognized his joking tone, but now it felt like pure mockery. It made me wish I'd never forgiven him for leaving me in the bathroom that day. Mrs. Mitchell tilted her head in consideration and placed a hand on Mr. Mitchell's face. "Aw, honey, there's a lot about the kids being little that I'll miss, but this isn't one of them. Maybe if you'd been more helpful." She pinched his cheek, and they both giggled like mischievous beasts plotting their most vile acts. "I helped," Mr. Mitchell defended. This time, it was mostly just the men in the room who laughed. "You moved him twice in 14 years. They were great hiding places?" Mrs. Mitchell scoffed. "The toilet is not what I consider a great place, Sam." "Okay, that time didn't count. I brought him to the bathroom with me and forgot about him. More to my point, you weren't helpful?" Mrs. Mitchell pecked Mr. Mitchell on the lips. "It's okay. I still love you. But you'll forgive me for being a little excited to not have to do this anymore." Mr. Duncan slung an arm around Mrs. Mitchell's shoulder. "All right, you two. I can see you're just as eager as Sarah was, so should we get on with it then? We know Skipper's name, and I'm assuming your worst memory with him was this, toilet incident. Is that right, Sam? Are there any good memories with Skipper you care to share before your final goodbye?" Lifeless in her hands, I willed her to remember all our good times together. They had to have been real to her. They had to have meant something, the way I know they meant something, not just to me, but to Skylar and Oliver. Remember their little faces, lit up each morning at the surprise of my new location? Remember how happy they were when Thanksgiving ended because they knew I would arrive soon? I'd brought joy to them for 14 years. How was it possible that they could throw me away? Well, there was one thing. Mrs. Mitchell's voice trailed off. I felt her grip loosen slightly, and a sparkle of hope twinkled in my soft, fluff-filled belly as she turned me in her hands to face her. Lifting me up to her eye level, she stared directly into mine, and I saw 1,000 memories swirling around her glistening green eyes. I'd always thought they looked like the most beautiful holiday wreaths in the world. I'd admired them so many times, but this time I begged her to return the favor. Which moment was she remembering now? The time I mowed the lawn? Or the time I built a gingerbread house and ate part of the roof? Whatever point in our past it was, I wondered if it would be enough to change her mind about all of this. Oh, never mind. All of it was just silly, and I'm so relieved to be done with it. Yeah! The crowd cheered, and my heart sank lower than the thermostat at the North Pole. She was really going to go through with it. What was I going to do? I heard Mr. Duncan spouting off more jokes, and I knew I was losing time. If I didn't do anything soon, I was about to be tossed into the fireplace alongside my now molten friend, Polly. Poor Polly. Had he even an inkling of what his fate had in store for him? Had he loved and trusted the Halberries as I had loved and trusted the Mitchells? I had not known him well, but I'd like to believe that if he'd had any idea about what they were going to do to him, he would have done something to stop it, even if it meant breaking the number one rule. I was still gazing into Mrs. Mitchell's eyes when I saw her lips beginning to form the words, "Goodbye." It was then that I decided I wouldn't let this happen. It was then that I broke my stillness. I leaned forward and slapped her across the face. "How dare you?" I huffed, and the sound of my own voice shocked me, for it had been many years since I heard it. I thought we were family, but families don't burn other members of their family, with my voice being so high-pitched and quiet. It took a moment for everyone to realize what was happening. But once they saw Mrs. Mitchell's face, frozen in an expression of horror, the room fell deathly silent. "Skipper?" Mrs. Mitchell breathed, but by then, I was already out of her hands. I jumped up onto the fireplace mantel and raced across it. I grabbed a hold of some tinsel garland and flew myself across the room towards the Christmas tree, grateful that this one still had its star-shaped tree topper. I remembered long, long ago when Santa had warned us that if we'd ever had an emergency, it was the tree toppers that could quickly transport us to safety. The fear that they might catch me fueled my speed, and quickly I climbed through the branches, the ornaments, and the string of lights all the way up to the top, feeling every single malicious eye searing through my back. Once I finally reached the top, I was breathless. I turned to face the room of malevolent demons and realized my fear had been unwarranted. None of them had moved an inch since I'd sprang into action. Every single one of them was frozen, mouth agape, and staring, as petrified as I had been, watching from within Mrs. Mitchell's purse. I even saw Sarah peek towards Polly's ashen remains in the fireplace. I scanned the faces of them all, and when I landed on the Mrs. Mitchell, I narrowed my eyes. "You owe Schuyler and Oliver a jar of pickles," I said. Then I placed my hand on the glistening star atop the Duncan's Christmas tree, and like a sudden stroke of magic, it was I who was finally liberated. 28 Sleighs Later. Above the laughter and Christmas music, the bang against the door came. Thump, thump, thumped Paul Reyes sighed. He patted his wife's hand and pushed his chair away from the table. "Don't worry, love. I've got this one." Rosemary frowned at him. "But everybody's here. Who could it be?" He stopped. Rose had framed the doorbell with tinsel. You couldn't miss it. It would take a brain-dead person to knock instead of ringing. He shrugged. "Carolers, or something. I'll give 'em a quid and tell 'em to bugger off." A round of laughter rippled around the table. The playlist swapped over to Wham's Last Christmas. Outside in the front hall, the door shuddered again. Thump, thump, thump. It banged hard enough to make the door viot in its frame. Annoyance flickered in his mind. The nerve of some of these charity-begging types. He wasn't one to sniff at donations, but give a man ample time to get up. And don't knock his door down like you're the wolf versus the three little pigs. He hurried along in his slippers. I'm coming, hold your horses." But still, the banging continued. Thump, thump, thump. The little panes of glass at the top of the door vibrated and threatened to shatter. The figure of a man swayed beyond, blurry and dark. Paul gritted his teeth. He'd have some stern words for whoever it was. It didn't matter what good cause they were raising money for. This behavior was downright rude. He slid the chain off and yanked the door open. "Oh, for goodness sake, what's your prob?" The man behind the door barged through, snarling and screeching. He wore a parka coat with its fur-ringed hood raised. It framed his mess of a face. He had blood smeared all across his skin, and his nose was missing. A window shattered somewhere in the back of the house, and a woman shrieked. Paul's stomach dropped, and he screamed. He grappled with the invader and grabbed a hold of his shoulders. "What?" he grunted. "Let go of me." The man clawed at Paul's shirt. He leaned forward and snapped his teeth. His breath was rotten, and he had bits of ragged meat caught between his teeth. He snarled like a wildcat, and his eyes were white, except for tiny pinpricks of blackness in the center. He flinched backwards from the bites. It was almost as if the maniac wanted to bite his nose off, too, as revenge for losing his own. Whatever was wrong with him, drugs, he guessed. He was dangerous, and Paul had to stop him. Paul grabbed the nearest thing from the shelf on the wall, an animatronic snowman. He smacked the madman across the face with it. Jingle Bell Rock played from the crappy speakers, and the snowman started to boogie. Paul hit the man with it again and again. "Get out! Get out!" The man recoiled from each blow of the rubber decoration. He snarled and shrieked, backing away through the front door as Paul struck him. At some point, something mechanical cracked inside the snowman. The song came out slurred and slow. Jack Frost danced slower. One arm snapped off, and his head dented inwards. Blood smeared across his white body. Adrenaline surged through Paul's veins, reminding him of how it felt to be a young man. He became aware of his battle cry as he fought the mauled lunatic out of his home. With the noseless man wobbling on the threshold, Paul landed a kick into the guy's gut. "And stay out!" he roared. The man went sprawling backwards over the Reyes' front steps. He clattered into a heap at the foot of their driveway. At the top of the driveway staggered a group of people. 2 men and 4 women. Each had various ghastly wounds, like the noseless assailant. A cheek torn open here, an eye gouged out there. Intestines spilt out of one woman's belly and trailed behind her like a bridal train. Across his small patch of lawn in front of the lounge windows, a woman with one arm shambled towards him. Paul's nerves turned to liquid, and his legs to jelly. He whimpered and felt his bladder threaten to release. He scrambled for the door, missed, found the handle, and slammed it shut. With shaking hands, he slid the chain back across, his fingers slaked with gore. "Jesus, Jesus, Jesus," he whispered to himself. Immediately, the door began to bang again, and so did the windows looking into the lounge. And the screams from the back of the house continued, high-pitched and terrified. Goose flesh rippled up all over Paul's body. These nutcases had surrounded the house. He had no idea what they wanted, but he guessed it wasn't a cup of cocoa. He pushed off from the vibrating door and strode towards the sound of the commotion. He brandished his decoration/weapon. Rose, in the kitchen, some of the attackers had smashed their way through the windows. The glass sliced their forearms to ribbons, but they didn't care. They were trying to pull Rose out by her hair. She shrieked and kicked and batted at the hands to no avail. Several of their guests stood by and watched, their faces drawn in a rictus of shock. They still held their alcoholic beverages. Sean from next door had gone white, and his beer was tipping and spilling on the kitchen tiles. Paul froze. Rose had always argued about getting double glazing, but he'd deferred. He now wished he'd listened to his wife. How long until the front windows, looking out onto the lawn, shattered under the strain? He slapped himself across the face and raced into the fray, swinging Frosty for all his worth. He smacked at the hands that snaked through the glass over and over and over again. "Get off my wife, you damn hooligans." That broke the paralysis spell over the others. The kitchen became a flurry of activity as people dropped drinks and grabbed a hold of Rose. Gail Clark yanked on Rose's feet, pulling her back into the house. In his vest and tie combo, Sean lobbed his pint glass through the window with a violent yell. The claws clutching Rose weakened enough for her to break away. Rosemary collapsed to the floor, sobbing. She held her hands to the blotchy red patches of yanked-out hair. Paul's mind was a flurrying snowstorm of thought. He stood in the kitchen, chest heaving. He stared out at the people gathered in his back garden. "Zombies," he said, not quite believing himself. "They're goddamn zombies." The swaying figures closed in on the house. Bangs and clangs echoed from the front. The dim winter light faded as the bodies blocked out the windows. They moaned in a chorus of the dead, their bloodied hands slapping against the four walls. Someone asked, "What do we do, Paul?" I don't," a woman screeched. "They're coming down the fireplace." An ice shard speared through Paul's core, and the world seemed to slow. "Sweet baby Jesus," he mumbled. An enormous thud shook the foundations of the house. The survivors staggered to the walls for support. Paul shook his head clear. He tightened his grip on Frosty and ran for the lounge. He skidded to a halt as a cloud of coal dust settled across the room, coating the furniture and the tree. The hell? The smog cleared to reveal a massive man in a red and white suit. He kneeled, fists on either side, like the Terminator from that Schwarzenegger flick. A large brown sack slung over his shoulder. He had heavy-duty black boots, and a Santa hat clung to his head. Paul's insides shriveled. He'd fought off the one at the door because they'd been roughly the same size. But this one? No chance. He tried to speak, but found that all the spit had evaporated from his mouth. Only a tiny mouse-like squeak came from his vocal cords. The giant looked up. His eyes sparkled above two rosy cheeks. The orbs looked normal. No cataractic whiteness, narrowing to a black pinprick. A big, thick, white, bushy beard sprouted from his face. Paul dropped the damaged Frosty, which bounced to the laminate wooden floor. His head spun like he'd taken a right hook to the dome. "Santa?" Paul whimpered. Santa smiled, but the smile was fleeting. "Yes, Paul, it is me. Do not be afraid." He glanced at the window, which showed the growing horde pressing against it. "But you should be afraid of those naughty boys and girls." Paul's heart hammered high up in his chest, like a hummingbird trapped in his torso. His brain kept rifling through facts and thoughts, as if to make sense of it all. His old thinker kept coming up short. It threw its cards in the air and searched through the rubble again. "What?" He licked his lips. "What do we do?" Santa grinned and stood up. He was 8 feet tall and towered over Paul and the others. If he were any taller, he wouldn't be able to stand upright in this house. He chuckled a deep, throaty laugh. "Ho, ho, ho." It rumbled through the earth like a bear's growl. Santa unslung his sack and upended it onto the living room floor. Machetes, blades, baseball bats, cricket bats, axes and chainsaws, swords and knives, flamethrowers and guns, even a grenade, and armor. It looked like police riot gear, except it had the symbol of a snowflake. "I have brought you well-behaved children, some toys to play with." Paul regained some of his lost nerve at the sight of the armory. With this elf-like giant on their side, they could turn the tides of battle. He bent down and picked up a chainsaw. "Groovy," Santa bowed. "Now, if you will excuse me, I have a few 100,000 more homes to equip for the coming siege." Out beyond the front window, a reindeer with a red nose was fighting off zombies with its antlers. It was winning. Paul felt like someone had punched the wind out of him. His eyes darted from Santa to the fireplace. "You mean you won't stay? Won't stay and fight?" We won't last without you. I am afraid there are others who need me." Santa raised one gloved finger. "Remember, Paul, jealousy and greed are very naughty." He gestured to the treasure hoard on the ground. "I brought you these because you have all been good. Let us keep it that way. Will you at least tell us why this is happening?" Santa narrowed his eyes. "When there is no more room in ho-ho hell, the dead will walk the earth." And with that, he vanished back up the chimney in the blink of an eye. In the background, the glass front window started to crack. A lightning bolt fault line zigzagged. Paul revved the chainsaw and beckoned his friends and family. Let's do this. Everyone, arm yourselves. Rose, stay behind me. Put some armor on. Gale picked up a spear and donned a helmet. She pulled up alongside Paul and jabbed at the air between them and the fracturing window. A flurry of movement in the distance showed that Rudolph was still fending off the zombies. Gale screeched. Jesus is the only zombie we allow this time of year. Paul took the lead and strode forward, chainsaw in front like a jouster. Sean drew alongside with a shotgun. He pumped it, and 2 red shells bounced to the Reyes' rug. Sean had a steely look in his eyes that Paul had never seen before. He didn't even know the man could handle a gun. The only thing we should be eating is turkey. The window gave way, and the zombies flooded in. Paul raised the growling chainsaw and went to battle. Rest in peace on earth. O unholy night. Iceland's winter festivities are a perfect excuse to feast and make merry, and I partake with an insatiable appetite. I adore the endless nights wandering abroad and relish chance encounters with hapless stragglers trudging home. They all laugh when I tell them carol singing's not to my taste, and chuckle when I say choristers are delightful and sweet. But how their mirth dissolves as I envelop them in my cloak and whisper, "What a toothsome treat you are. You're good enough to eat." I despise summer, like all cold-blooded creatures, preferring a catatonic sleep to roasting in the sun. Every autumn, I anticipate the evening when Ingvar disturbs my estivation, and I return to a nocturnal lifestyle. He disinterrs my casket from the family plot every year during the first week of December. It's a tradition my loyal retainer has followed for years, just like his father and his father's father, ad infinitum. It's impossible to find reliable help these days. And so, despite Ingvar's poor social skills, I re-employ his services annually. Ingvar obeys my written orders to the letter on the pain of death. If not in this life, then his neck. Thwack, crunch. My mind basks in a dream state when Ingvar invades my solitude, hacking through the icebound earth above. Crake, skreek. I hear the shovel scrape debris off the wooden lid, and his doleful voice murmuring a tuneless refrain. The unsettling melody stirs my clouded mind like a moorland breeze whistling through gnarled branches. Its clashing dissonances offend my refined musical sensibilities and cause my heart to quiver and contract. Lub, dub, lub, dub, lub, dub. My constricted arteries dilate as Ingvar wrenches at the coffin nails with his claw hammer. His frenzied efforts cause minor explosions in the darkness, dusting the threadbare silk lining with clouds of grit. As Ingvar prizes open the ancient pine lid, my sensitive eyeballs roll upwards, avoiding the moon's inquisitive gaze. My rib cage twitches in a violent spasm as wheezing lung sacs inhale clean air. I choke and splutter before coughing out stale fumes that rasp my withered throat like a rusty file. With each heartbeat, blood churns throughout my aching body, carrying oxygen to every cell. It's always the most painful part of my awakening. Pins and needles prickle each desiccated sinew, and every limb screams as it receives life-giving fluid. The blood returns to the heart after delivering oxygen, and my mind explodes with predatory thoughts anew. My throbbing heart sends the blood to lungs that strain hard to collect more air. I reflux and retch a pint of sticky phlegm from deep down. Ingvar is used to this unsightly reaction and tends to the detritus with a clean cloth. His caring touch is delicate and professional, and his face is unflinching. He lacks any sentiment. This is his business. Ingvar had strict instructions prior to my exhumation. He was to source a flask of fresh blood by whatever means necessary. The task never varies, but the source depends whereabouts I resume my existence. We're never in the same town twice, for obvious reasons. He's learned to adapt to my circumstances with undeniable efficiency. Ingvar has my best interests at heart, and he's also on the payroll. This winter season, he's moored our vessel in a quiet northwestern harbor outside Sudavik. It's an unassuming fishing town with a medical center and a venue for blood donors. Once on shore, he disguised himself and liberated a quart from their supply. It's a rich-looking concoction that will suffice for now. However, it's not the same as sinking my teeth into a warm jugular and slurping on the real deal. Ingvar steadies my quivering hands as I raise the glass container to my lips. I close my weary eyelids, and after a few sips, everything calms down. My sweaty palms dry out, and my prune-like fingers appear to elongate as my skin tightens. The sagging flesh under my jaw disappears, and my furrowed brow loses its careworn lines. At last, the throbbing pain behind my eyeballs dissipates, and my labored breathing settles into a regular rhythm. My once erratic heart beat chugs at a steady rate, and the queasiness in my stomach eases after a discharge of rancid gas. My rejuvenation is complete, and I rise from the coffin to assume my full height, like a magnificent butterfly casting off its shriveled chrysalis and unfurling its wings before flight. I nod at my retainer, and he tips his forelock and bows. I acknowledge his endeavors with a satisfied smile and survey the snowbound nightscape, glistening like an ocean of diamonds under the moon's bashful glow. Ingvar wafts his left hand through the air shepherding me towards the waiting brougham with his outstretched right arm. Two majestic black drays snort white plumes from flared nostrils beside my handsome carriage. We take our seats as pristine snowflakes descend and settle on the bodywork's polished ebony. It's a fine welcome and a tremendous relief to be undead once more. The sight of my baleful old vehicle cantering through the small coastal town of Sudavik draws little attention. In previous years, the ominous rumble of hooves and creaking coach springs would herald an unfamiliar guest. But the inhabitants have other issues this year. They've entombed themselves within their homes, battened down their pine window shutters, and laced their thresholds with wreaths of protective herbs, ensuring plenty of garlics on hand. It should flatter me they fear the visit of a malevolent nocturnal predator. However, the precautions aren't for my sole benefit. The coronavirus's arrival has influenced behavior, and the government has enforced a lockdown. Ingvar understood there were unusual circumstances this year, but thought it prudent to interrupt my deep slumbers regardless. My initial reaction was one of joy. What better return could I expect than to discover piles of bodies waiting to be devoured? However, it transpires that the Health and Safety Department has issued an edict. Local undertakers are to dispose of the corpses through the crematorium. The local council is determined to sanitize the town and cleanse the region. I hadn't connected the hazy fog lingering above the coastline with the current climate of dread. Sudavik's furnaces are working overtime to dispose of the deceased. The impact on my festive plans is catastrophic. Citizens locked away in their homes until further notice. No bodies languishing on mortuary slabs waiting for morticians, and funerals performed in secrecy with the bereaved attending by Zoom. None of these scenarios bode well for a creature of my particular inclinations. I'll need to redraft Ingvar's commands with caveats that cater to similar events. A do not resuscitate clause should cover matters in the future. As for now, we'll retreat to the mountains, and I'll ponder the options. Iceland's 13 days of celebrations leading up to Christmas are a disaster for all the residents. Children won't be leaving shoes beside their open bedroom windows. There'll be no trolls gifting trick-or-treats this year. The authorities have banned the Yule lads' nightly visits. It's a bleak prospect all round. I have some tough decisions to make as we ascend to my mountaintop fortress. Most years, I'd prowl along local shores, searching for lonesome visitors and lost souls. My spirit descends into a quagmire as I contemplate the prospect of scouring isolated fjords for bilious vagrants and ill-kempt vagabonds. It seems unlikely that I'll quench my thirst this winter. The locals have barricaded themselves in their homes, and according to Ingvar, they're low on stock at the blood bank. As the days trickle past, the wind howls like a wounded banshee, and the ground hardens to rock. The snows gather in drifts, blocking our descent and jeopardizing my strategic movements. Ingvar spends his days grooming the horses, and at night he sips his supplies of Brennivin. Most evenings he passes out from its effects, having buried himself under a mountain of furs. He knows his services are not required during these hard times, despite being primed to chauffeur me down the mountain on a whim. I've endured centuries of this existence. Life is relative, of course. It isn't a life most know. It's punishment for cheating death. Centuries of endless torture in purgatory. I'm cursed to roam forever, fearful of daylight, and all for a few drops of blood. I suppose it could be worse. There's a contagious disease in the vicinity. I guess it'd just be my luck if I contracted the coronavirus, wouldn't it? A year of coughing and wheezing inside my casket is inconceivable. The thought is most unappealing. And so, it's time to call it a night. Ingvar must enter my coffin until the epidemic's over. Maybe my luck will improve next year. VISE. News Real Talk. The art of soul swapping. New research proposes a radical solution for the estimated 13 million people who unwittingly lost their souls in last year's Black Friday mishap. While hell isn't offering refunds anytime soon, a soul swap isn't out of the question, says Sam Ackerman, sole author on the study and CEO of Exosouls. His paper, titled Devilish Details, a sparse Bayesian learning framework for enhancing the Exosouls algorithm, is published this week in Chaos, a non-linear journal of translational science. In it, Ackerman claims to have unraveled the 2-for-1 soul swap terms and conditions of the Philadelphia Screamer. He then introduces a machine learning model designed to identify likely victims who have yet to come forward, as well as predict the likelihood of unsold souls going to hell anyway. Ackerman goes on to suggest that when combined with his proprietary Exosouls algorithm, this novel framework can accurately pair last year's Black Friday victims with unsold hellbound souls, a finding that could give hope to millions. Vice's own Brett Love spoke with Ackerman while putting his updated soul swap theory to the test in real time. This interview has not been edited for clarity or length because hard-hitting journalism has no filters. Q&A with Brett Love and Sam Ackerman. Brett, Love. So, how about you tell me why I'm stuck in Philadelphia traffic with a conch shell in my front seat? Sam Ackerman. Great. Right to the point. So, that conch shell is there to help you hear the screams of the damned. Cupping your hands to your ears is also an option, but that's more prone to error. I don't know if I like the sound of that. No one does. Now, as for the Philadelphia traffic, we need a bit more context for that one. You remember last year when the real Burning Man, who screams eternal, or simply the Philadelphia Screamer. Most people just call him Phil now. Sure, let's call him Phil. Anyway, after Phil showed up last year, screaming and burning and chained to the William Penn statue atop Philadelphia City Hall with that Black Friday offer flaming across his torso, people were understandably curious. So, of course, someone flies a drone up there to get a closer look at this giant chained to the Will Penn statue. And forgive me for the recap, but let's not forget how incredible that moment was and still is today. I mean, he's bound there, like Prometheus, except instead of eagles tearing out his liver only for it to regrow, there's a flaming message that burns to life again and again, letter by letter, from neck to navel. It's Hell's version of a flashing neon sign, and it says, "Two souls take the place of one in Black Friday's shadow. Make your wish known, and they shall pay the price." Right. And who can blame people for thinking it's your classic 2-for-1 Black Friday deal? Exactly. Last year's tragic miscalculation really just came down to otherwise honest folk simply hoping to cheat Satan on one day of the year with no consequences whatsoever. They thought they could make their wildest wish come true while sacrificing the souls of two of their worst enemies. When you think about it, the choice of holiday makes perfect sense too. Halloween is too on the nose, and Christmas is off limits. But Thanksgiving is, well, it's a gobbledygook of whitewashed genocide and glorified capitalism. So why wouldn't Satan want to piggyback on that? Just look, and you'll find him in the eyes of crazed consumers everywhere, in that Black Friday aftermath of filth left behind by the world's worst holiday. Wow. You really hate Thanksgiving. What about cranberry sauce? You'll cut out that last part, right? I don't want to turn off potential Exosouls clients, sure. But you still haven't told me why I'm stuck in Philly traffic this Black Friday. Oh, right. So we already covered Phil, and the rest comes down to word origin. Before Black Friday found its way into the common parlance, it was used by Philadelphia traffic cops who were fed up with the crowds after Thanksgiving. This was back in the 1960s, so it all comes down to a simple misunderstanding. And hell probably wasn't trying to be nefarious here. I mean, they sent their screaming giant to Philadelphia, after all. They just thought that's where Black Friday applied. So they thought it was still 1960-something, even though Phil arrived in 2022. You're talking about relativity and time dilation, right? Yes. No, not really. Listen, the theory of special relativity is a wonderful lens for examining the wonders of the universe, but it likely holds no meaning in hell. Perhaps whoever sent Phil is forced to experience a distorted sense of time passing on Earth to further highlight their own eternity in hell. A form of time torture, if you will. But that's just speculation, something that future research could explore. Regardless, my current research strongly suggests that Hell's Black Friday deal only applies to Philadelphia traffic. What do you mean by suggests? I mean, I'm about to test your soul swap theory here, so you're sure, right? Please don't call it swap. I never mention that term once in my paper, and I don't know why. The media keeps throwing it out there. This isn't the movie Freaky Friday. We're not switching souls or bodies or anything like that. Say exchange if you must, but it's in the company name, Exo Souls, with exo meaning external and souls meaning plural. It's a simple 2-for-1 exchange, and at no point do you swap souls with anyone else. Now, do you have the Exo Souls app installed on your phone, Brett? Yeah, but I'm asking if you're sure your soul swap. Is your theory correct? Listen, there are 1,000 different researchers giving 1,000 different reasons for last year's Black Friday mishap. They blame it on wildly irresponsible statistics, poor reading skills, TikTok trends, rising obesity rates, or excess levels of tryptophan. But not one has demonstrated as high a degree of correlation as I have. I'm sure you've already read the paper, but let me offer a quick recap for those who haven't. We know for a fact that people who have turned their souls see themselves with their eyes sewn shut every time they look in a mirror, while most hell-bound people don't advertise that about themselves. We also know that there was a spike in self-reported eyes sewn shut sightings last year, likely due to outrage over misinterpreting Hell's Black Friday offer. Now, I used those reports as a starting point for constructing my sparse Bayesian learning framework while accounting for normal levels of dishonesty. In addition to identifying unreported victims, my model also identifies those with unsold souls who have high hell-bound risk. However, the truly surprising finding comes when looking at the distribution of likely victims. It's a fairly regular distribution. That is, it's standard for places other than the city of brotherly love. More specifically, for places devoid of Philly traffic. What I'm saying is high-traffic Philadelphia areas are almost blank spots on that distribution map of likely victims from last year's Black Friday mishap. That's where people were able to take advantage of Hell's 2-for-1 offer, because that's the area that corresponds to Hell's definition of Black Friday. It's an incredibly strong correlation. And that's why you're stuck in Philly traffic this Black Friday, Brett. Does that make sense? Yeah, I think so. Maybe you could give a quick refresher on correlation versus causation. No, We don't want to risk traffic clearing up on us. Just Google ice cream drowning deaths after the interview. So, without further ado, could you please open the ExoSouls app, Brett? First, I've got to ask, why are we doing this over the phone? Why wouldn't you agree to a face-to-face interview? Selling one's soul can't be done in company. If you open the app, I'll guide you through it. Okay, app is open. Hey, nice interface. Kind of like Twitter, with less hate speech. And I just looked in the rear view mirror. I can say with relief that the eyes of my reflection aren't sewn shut. Well, we haven't done anything yet. To verify, can you tell me how many active users you see in the ExoSouls app? I see 437. Now it's 443. Hang on. Shouldn't the numbers be doubling with the 2-for-1 soul swap? Good. I see those same numbers. And remember, it's not a swap. The numbers aren't doubling for a couple reasons. First, not everyone is selling their souls simultaneously. Second, a number of users regain their souls with each transaction. Obviously, the total number of souls sold must increase over time, which is great for ExoSouls in terms of active users. But wait, you said some users regain their souls? Could you explain? You know it's reversible, right? It's in my chaos paper. I even mention it in the abstract. Sure, yeah, I know. But it may be worth explaining for the sake of the interview. Okay, traffic is looking steady, so I'll give a quick example. Hell's Black Friday 2-for-1 offer requires 3 souls. 1 soul to take advantage of the offer, and 2 more souls to pay the price. So, let's call the souls A, B, and C. And say they're all stuck in Philadelphia traffic. Imagine that A makes its soul-selling wish, which marks souls B and C as bound for hell when their time on earth is done. Now, say B, whose soul has already been sold, still wants to take advantage of the 2-for-1 offer. Hell owns B, but Hell doesn't care about individuals. Hell's goal is to simply gather as many souls as possible, so it would gladly trade B for 2 unclaimed souls. Soul A is still unclaimed, but we need another unclaimed soul to make B's transaction possible. That's where Soul D comes in. If Souls A and D reach out to Hell and offer their souls in place of B's, Hell can't refuse. Sure, it loses a soul, but it also gains 2. And Hell must grant B a wish for the 2-to-1 offer to still hold true. Within this scenario, the first wish led to 2 hell-bound souls, while the second wish results in a total of 3 hell-bound souls within the group. You can see that the number didn't double in this instance. Of course, that number could easily keep doubling if everyone keeps making the selfish decision. But that's the beauty of the ExoSouls app. Its algorithm was already working to balance mutual and self-interests. But this latest enhancement connects Black Friday victims with likely hellbound to boost cooperation and user engagement. Does that answer your reversibility question, Brett? Yeah. And then some. But I mean that in a good way. You have me convinced. How do I get started? Let's see. The algorithm wants you to sell your soul in the traditional way first. That means no taking advantage of the 2-for-1 offer just yet. After that, exosouls will pair you with 2 unclaimed souls, so you can regain your soul. Wow, I hesitate to use the word luck, but this is a rare instance in my experience. At the risk of sounding redundant, I'd even go so far as to say ultra rare. Brett, you get to make 2 incredible, near back-to-back wishes and still keep your soul this Black Friday. Oh man, I haven't thought about what I want. What do I click to make it happen? Haha, you don't click anything. Exosouls points you to the best possible outcome. But this next part is low-tech, a tried-and-true method as old as mankind itself. First, what you want to do is pick up that conch shell from the passenger seat and hold it to your ear. Then, I want you to listen for the screams of the damned, okay? I've got you on speakerphone and the conch shell to my ear. Do you hear the screams yet, Brett? Maybe. But that could just be Phil on top of City Hall. I think he's nearby. Forget about Phil. Think about the worst moment of your life. Relive it. Imagine that conch shell is a calcified ear that can hear your innermost thoughts. Whoa, I hear it. Jesus Christ. Keep that shell to your ear, Brett. Now tell me, how does traffic look? Oh God. Focus, Brett. How's traffic? Okay. It's nearly at a standstill. Good. Now, I want you to close your eyes nearly all the way until you're looking through your eyelashes. Then, stare at your reflection in the rear view mirror. Are you doing it? Yes. But I don't like this anymore. Don't stop. You're nearly there. Promise your soul for your heart's desire. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I want. Just wish for the first thing on your mind. There are no wrong answers here, Brett. If it's in hell's power to grant it, you'll get your wish. Oh man, I did it. The shell is silent and... oh God, that's awful. What do you see? I see my own eyes sewn shut in the mirror. How is that possible? Yeah, no one ever gets used to it. But the good news is I'm working on augmented reality glasses to add eyes to mirrors for those who've sold their souls. And the even better news is you've managed to successfully sell your soul. Now, exosouls should find a pair of unclaimed souls for you soon here. We're up to 643 active users, so maybe some are right next to you in traffic. While we wait, And if you don't mind me asking, what was your wish? Well, it's kind of silly, but it was the first thing that came to mind. I wished for the traffic to clear up, and it's already moving at normal speed. Amazing. Although I guess I kind of wasted my first wish. You did a lot more than that. Do you somehow not understand words? For Christ's sake. You asked me twice why you were stuck in Philadelphia traffic. Shit. Can we try again next year? Well, what other option does everyone else have? Except for you, Brett. Sorry, but the ExoSoul's algorithm has banned you from the app. Good luck and goodbye, every last drop. I enter Red Square from the south side. It's late. There's no one else around. My footfalls echo across the bricks. Then I spot him, a slender figure beneath one of the cherry trees outside Drake Hall. Silvery white hair pulled back in a ponytail. Black gloves, combat boots, a wool trench coat, the preferred attire of all psychopaths. I reach into my purse. In the next instant, he is standing right beside me. Excuse me, miss. I pepper spray him in the face. He takes it stoically, with little more than a wince. I empty the entire can, but he just stands there, squinching like it's nothing but tepid water. Then he wipes his obsidian eyes clean with his gloved fingertips. I suppose I deserve that. I forget how fast we seem to you. Forgive me. I mean no harm. I will scream. You're Anika Chande, yes? From the physics department? Doctor, I say by reflex, sounding breathless. Who are you? Or what? Dr. Chande, forgive me, he repeats, extending a hand. My name is Sasha Volkov. I've read your books and all the papers you've published. Your work with photons is nothing short of brilliant. No pun intended. Thank you, I say flatly. I don't believe in auras, but if I did, his would be ice cold. I decline his handshake. I don't want my blood to crystallize in my veins. I'm hoping you will help me, he continues. You are perhaps the only one who can. I don't think so. His pencil-thin eyebrows pin together. You don't understand. No, you don't understand. You don't warp 15 yards across a plaza in the blink of an eye, demonstrate a superhuman immunity to capsaicin, and then ask for a favor. I see you're sporting a nice pair of fangs as well. That's very cute. Am I being punked? No, ma'am. He pulls a handkerchief out of his coat and mops his face with it. Although I have been told I look like Slavic Ashton Kutcher. I'm calling the campus police. Please, hear me out. Look, I'll show you. He walks into a beam of moonlight and vanishes. Not entirely. His outfit is still visible, but there's no one inside it. I start to deliver on my promise to scream, but the sound catches in my throat. The ludicrousness of the sight the sheer improbability. I must be suffering a psychotic break from the stress of finals, or the sushi I had for lunch is causing hallucinations, makes me scoff and start laughing instead. Very impressive. Bravo. You see, the trench coat says, gloves raised in a gesture of helplessness. Somewhere along the way, our species developed this ability or disability, depending on your point of view, to disappear under direct light. That's why we're nocturnal. You might assume this gives us a natural predatory advantage, but it's actually incredibly frustrating. Imagine trying to eat a sandwich without being able to see your hands, and it's painful. The stronger the light, the more intense the discomfort. Is that why you live in Seattle? I snort. Because the sun is never out? Yes, exactly. Makes sense. I have a hunch there may be some sort of interference at the quantum level between our body's atoms and solar photons. That's why we have no reflection and can't be captured on film. But the human mind can't abide the irrationality, so by rote, it forms a composite to make us appear whole. He returns to the shadows and rematerializes. A fancy illusion, just smoke and mirrors. Nothing to see here. No need for an anchor to drop into my stomach, or the hairs on the back of my neck to stand up. Nature had to find some way of keeping us in check, or we would have rendered you extinct by now. What do you want? I ask, wishing my voice didn't make me sound so fragile, so human. There was an article about you in the school newsletter recently. Thanks to a generous donation from someone who wished to remain anonymous, your lab was able to get a new quantum camera and an entangled photon detector. Volkov grins, his cobra-like fangs glistening even in the dark. I am that mysterious benefactor, and I want you to take my picture. Please stop messing with me. This really isn't funny at all. I'm quite serious, actually. We use simple objects for quantum imaging, like an emblem made out of gold and silicon, not living beings. Well, according to your lore, I'm not really alive. Isn't that right? I grip the strap of my purse, certain at any moment I'm going to wake up in a puddle of my own drool at my desk, having fallen into a fever dream. Undead beings, then. The fact remains. You injure me, Doctor. I am not a zombie or a virus. My physiology is nearly identical to yours, with a few notable differences, of course. His stare is beyond unsettling. I cast my gaze towards the parking lot and keep it there in case he's trying to hypnotize me. It's very late. I need to be getting home to my family. He pretends not to hear me and carries on. I understand there may be challenges. That's why I'm asking you. You're the only one who can rise to the task. Mr. Volkov, whomever or whatever you are, I suggest you learn to take no for an answer. The first time, not the second or third or fourth. I stride away, making sure to keep my head held high, projecting indifference. "Oh, come now," he says, voice dropping to an impossibly low pitch. "I could just compel you to do it, but I'd rather you choose. This is an exciting opportunity for us both." My legs grow heavy. Against my will? How is he doing that? I stop in my tracks, my heartbeat rising rapidly into my throat. A mysterious gravity pulls me back in his direction, like my subconscious has staged a coup. I swallow against the growing certainty that this is actually happening. Only a monster would fail to see the false dichotomy of his proposal. All right then. Fine. In the lab, I keep the overhead lights off. The light from the monitors will have to suffice. As soon as we're inside, Volkov makes a beeline for the oversized Faraday cage one of my students built as part of her thesis. Like he knew it would be here, waiting for him. "What material is this lined with?" he asks through the open door. "Aluminum foil." "Ah, why? Worried it was silver?" The muscles of his jaw twitch. "No, that's another myth. Along with aversion to the crucifix, garlic, and wooden stakes. Nothing but superstitious nonsense, which, if I'm honest, I find rather insulting." "I see. It's going to take a while to get everything prepared." "I can wait," I hear him say. Except his lips didn't move. Much like your ascetic monks, we are capable of remaining motionless for protracted periods of time. Even when speaking into my mind, he sounds like a robot. "Stop that. I don't like it. It's invasive." "Forgive me," he says for the millionth time. But at least it's out loud. I set to work calibrating the laser with the beam splitter. Then ensure the quantum camera is in position to catch all the action. Once the photons pass through the vacuum chamber and into the Faraday cage, they will entangle with Volkov's atoms. Or won't, if there is indeed some sort of interference. Then the beam will be rejoined on the other side by a sensor. The high-precision spectrometer, along with the computer program on my laptop, will gather and interpret the data. You do understand that should we manage to get an image, it's going to be little more than a ghostly outline, right? Nothing like an actual photograph. When was the last time you saw your reflection, Doctor? In the bathroom, after class. I've never seen myself at all. Not in the surface of a lake, nor the glint of an eye, nor a darkened pane of glass. You cannot cast a shadow if you are never in the sun. I've commissioned sketches and paintings, of course, but it isn't the same, is it? I've never seen a real, tangible image of Sasha Volkov. He pauses. Because he's so still, I can't tell if he's battling with something or just going dormant. Can you imagine how that feels? To have so little confirmation of your very existence? I mean, I teach for a living. I shrug. I wonder how many people he's fed on. how many pints of blood he's drank. Thousands, he says, reading my thoughts again. Why is that relevant? I asked you not to do that. I can't help it. It's like asking me to ignore a blaring car alarm. If you want my help, then you can try. He doesn't move. Yet I feel his irritation growing, as though he's funneling his feelings directly into me. How many animals have you consumed in your lifetime? How many cows, chickens, fish? I'm vegan. Have been since 2006. Figured you would know that. The point is, you don't think of your food in those terms. Would you castigate a lion for feasting on a lamb? It is the way of things. We have been with you since the beginning, in the shade of your monuments, co-evolving. Nature designed us for a singular purpose, to cull the human herd. But as you can see, we're doing a piss-poor job of it. There's more of you than ever. In a surprising, potentially deceptive twist, I feel his emotions sink into self-pity, like he believes, ultimately, it is he who is the victim. Aren't your kind just humans who've been bitten and turned? Like Lestat and Lewis, his irritation blooms into full-blown disgust. Ridiculous. Can you turn a chimpanzee into a Homo sapiens? We reproduce the same way you mammals do, via fornication and pregnancy. We are warm-blooded, after all. It's just not our blood. It doesn't originate from our bone marrow. His anger cools a few degrees, and he adds, I have never been human, but I have lived. I have seen wonders and horrors you cannot begin to fathom. We have our own society, tucked away in the nooks and crannies of yours. Our own ambitions, too. Glad for the change of subject, I announce. We are ready to run our first trial. Please stop talking now and remain stationary. Volkov shuts the door and settles in. I click on the laser. The beam is split and sent into the cage. The hum of the machinery comforts me, brings to mind the many students who've used it to embark on their first voyage into the realm of the subatomic. The inevitable look of rapture when they finally see the particles they've spent so long reading about. In the midst of this rumination, I realize it's providing a kind of psychic cover. My subject is occupied, the grip of his influence weakened. I slip a ballpoint pen into the pocket of my blazer and pray he doesn't notice. We run 6 trials in total. The whole process takes a little over 2 hours. Once it's finished, I take a screenshot of the results and send it to the printer in my office. Volkov exits the cage and joins me, and once it's printed, I hand him the copy. He accepts it like it's his birth certificate. Like I said, pretty grainy, but it worked, he murmurs. His fingers trace over the grayscale form, caressing it. He is totally transfixed. I feel his heady mixture of elation and awe, the vanity that coils around his heart like a serpent. "It's me," he whispers. "You got what you came for. I need to get going now. My family will be worried." Volkov gives me the side eye. "Surely you know by now that lying to me is pointless." "I don't know what you mean." "If I don't get home soon, You live alone, Doctor. Have since your breakup with Paul. You don't own any pets. Nothing that depends on you for its survival. Not so much as a cactus. Your younger sister calls to check up on you every so often, but not often enough." He sounds bored with the subject, preferring to pore over the printout with the intensity of an art appraiser. "Is there anything else your system picked up on?" I push aside the sense of betrayal and shake my head. "The emissions analysis produced a string of errors. That would seem to confirm your hypothesis of some kind of interference, as no entanglement occurred in any of the 6 runs. But it would take a much more thorough experiment to isolate the actual cause of that interference." "I see," he says, licking his chops. "No matter. Still a tremendous success." Unable to help myself, I blurt out, "Are you going to kill me now?" He blanches. He's probably manipulating me, but I can feel the sting of hurt feelings in his chest. "Of course not, Doctor. You have me all wrong." He clutches the printout in both hands and peers around the lab, taking it all in. "I want you to study me further. Enlist the help of others, if need be. People we can trust to test my DNA and take blood samples. Think about it. If we can produce more results like this, you can publish them. These findings will fundamentally alter the world's understanding of biology and quantum mechanics. And what might that do for your career?" When I don't say anything, he continues, "It's time Homo sapiens learned they are not so alone as they imagine. It is time for us to evolve beyond the predator/prey dynamic and work together. We have to do something before your species gets us all killed with your utter disregard for the health of this planet." His eyes land on me. Despite his words, I feel sick to my stomach, because in his zeal, he's accidentally let slide a few of his memories. I see his first kill at just 4 years old, hunting with his father in the streets of Quebec. The elderly homeless man bundled up in a doorway, the pale, mottled flesh of his throat, the profound hunger, 1,000 times stronger than any I've ever experienced, an insatiable need. The man awakens and finds himself immobilized by Volkov's father. Fear pours out of him in a thick stench. His final thoughts are filled with deep regret. He's struggled so hard for so long, endured so much, and survived on so little, only to meet his end as some night creature's meal. And little Volkov loves it. Every drop of remorse, every pitiable whimper, every dream. He feeds on them along with the blood, gorges on the man's life force until he's full as a tick. And his father says simply, "Good." I see his most recent kill from earlier in the night. Stephanie Albright, the student who made the Faraday cage. He broke into her dorm and drained her in her sleep. She died and never saw it coming. Volkov looks at me now. He knows that I know. "Don't," he warns. I jam the ballpoint pen into his chest. My aim is perfect. It lodges between the ribs slightly, to the left of his sternum, and hits something hard, catching when he takes a breath. He growls at me. "I told you that wouldn't work." Then I'm soaring through the air. My body collides with the quantum camera, shattering it against the wall. I land in a heap on the floor, sparks raining down around me. Pain shoots up my spine. The wind knocked out of me. Volkov is on top of me in seconds, his weight like a 1,000-ton hydraulic press. There is no further possibility of fighting back. "Do it then," I hiss at him. "I will not be like the man in the streets. I will not go to my death without dignity. If he's going to eat me, let him taste nothing but pure hatred." "Do it, you fucking parasite." He flinches again. I feel his emotions fan out in a kaleidoscope of rage, disappointment, and woe, beneath which is a childlike longing for my approval. He can't hide it now that I've seen it. His need for recognition that washes over me in waves. It's nearly as overwhelming as his hunger, an insecurity born of being raised with no mother. "We could have done important work together," he says, voice choked with repudiation. Remember that. Then he's gone. His presence peels away like a bad dream. The overhead lights turn on. "Dr. Chande?" asks Officer Thompson. He's standing in the doorway, holding a nightstick. The school won't let him carry a gun. "Everything okay in here?" Shakily, I get to my feet and survey the damage to the lab. Other than the broken camera, all the equipment is intact. There's no sign Volkov was ever here, except for the image on my laptop. "I'm okay, officer," I say, "but we need to send the local police to Stephanie Albright's dorm room. There's been a homicide." Gripping his stick closer, Thompson asks, "How do you know that?" I stare at the screen. Its spray pattern of photons in a vaguely humanoid shape. The world's first evidence of the supernatural. But it could be anything. No better than a UFO sighting or a blurry photograph of Bigfoot in the woods. I clear my throat and glance at the officer. In the wake of Volkov's influence, my emotions come flooding back with a vengeance. Hot tears spill down my face. I clear my throat and remind myself, no matter what I experience, I am a scientist. Call it a hunch. Gertrude Inn. The span of my childhood could be separated into two categories: knowing and not knowing. In fact, everyone in my family, even the adults, could split similarly. Those who knew and those who didn't. Regardless of which category you fell into, everyone knew Grandma had certain proclivities. It was an unspoken thing, yet you felt how heavily it threaded into every conversation and side comment at family gatherings. No one really talked about it, not outright, but it was always there, lingering between the lines. The not knowing part of my childhood wasn't all blissful ignorance. Like the not knowing adults, there were always hints of restlessness whenever we visited Grandma's house of mirrors. That's what everyone called it, though to the public, it was Gertrude Inn, a quaint, 3-story, 100-year-old 10-bedroom house operating as a bed and breakfast, run by someone in my family since its inception. Despite how often she smiled, Grandma had this way of putting the house on edge. In a way, the inn was a reflection of her, aged, unique, beautiful, but full of secrets. Everyone walked on eggshells around her, though I'd never witnessed her so much as raise her voice. She smiled warmly, yet her eyes held a cold indifference that felt like she was seeing right through you, guts and all. Gertrude Inn sat in darkness during the day, supposedly to save on electricity. One single window and a shining beam of light brightened the winding corridors on each of the second and third floors. Those single sun rays felt so lively compared to all the shadows, with dust particles dancing in the warmth. My cousins used to make a game of only trying to walk in the sun, lest your legs get snatched by some faceless monster in the dark. There was some speculation that Gertrude Inn was haunted. Creaking floors and dim lighting aside, people reported strange sounds at all hours. Some guests even claimed to see ghosts. The inn had its own cult following amongst supernatural enthusiasts who shared photos of specter light orbs and ghostly apparitions of small girls and old ladies online, because the old lady ghosts looked eerily similar to Grandma. It was widely accepted that it must have been the ghost of a woman in our family tree. But the thing that really made Gertrude Inn feel like a horror movie set was the mirrors. My great-grandfather built them, and over the last 100 years, the walls became filled, nearly every clean inch coated in aluminum reflection. That single sun ray from those lone windows on each floor bounced about, decorating the halls in a disorienting, masking glow. Around the time when I transitioned from not knowing to knowing, I gained a unique fascination with the mirrors. My cousins, aunts, and uncles liked to pretend they didn't exist. When we were delegated to help out around the inn, I'd watch the others stalk the halls ahead of me, carrying buckets of cleaning supplies and fresh sheets, never looking from left to right at the mirrors. gazes fastened directly ahead. But I couldn't help but look back and forth, short as I was, fascinated by the different heights and styles of the framed mirrors around me, and how different and distorted they made me look, my face contorting and reshaping with each step. I liked to take my time in each bedroom when I cleaned, those walls equally covered in mirrors, making faces at myself and imagining someone else staring back at me. The year after Grandpa died, Grandma became more reclusive. One evening, my parents sent me to track her down, as she'd been missing since lunch, and it was long past dinner. Up to the 3rd floor, past the guest rooms, the further along I crept, the more the walls narrowed. A single sconce poorly illuminated the dark at each turn, but that one small light bounced off the mirrors, casting a dizzying glimmer. My reflection echoed all the way down the hallway, thousands of me watching back. Finally, I approached her room, and my hand shook as it clasped the vintage crystal doorknob, which spun loosely like it needed a repair, then pushed my way in. Her bed was made, complete with a crocheted white doily adorning an old quilt, another draped over a little red table, and a lit desk lamp that glowed beneath the stained glass lampshade. A soft humming caught my attention, but I couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. She wasn't anywhere in the tiny bedroom. I circled the space, trying to locate the source. The humming grew louder as I neared the armoire. I wouldn't consider myself a brave kid, but my curiosity was piqued, and no matter how hard my little heart rattled in my chest, or how sweaty my shaky hands felt, I pressed my ear to the closet door and listened. I gripped the metal handle, and the moment the door cracked open, Grandma's humming grew louder. Shoving dresses and shirts on coat hangers to the side, I stepped through a hole at the back of the closet. "Grandma?" I called out. The humming paused, then picked up again. I kept climbing, stepping over mounds of boots and boxes, until I emerged into the brightest lit room in the house, and there were mirrors everywhere. "Hello, darling Mercy." Grandma gestured for me to join her, not the least bit surprised to see me. "What is all this?" I looked around in wonder at all the beautiful, ornate mirrors, some framed in elaborate gold filigree, some in thick, knotted wood. Grandma stood in front of 3 large glass panels, resting on a massive, open-backed easel. Paintbrush in hand, she elbowed me playfully. "How'd you find me, little bug? Is this how you make mirrors?" I looked around in wonder. Grandma didn't answer. Her humming resumed, as did her painting. I glanced down at the table and saw 3 identical empty frames, all silver, with intricate faces painted along the edges. The faces resembled cherubs, but their teeth looked more like fangs. Smiles distorted. I looked back at the glass she was painting, and noticed something odd. "Grandma, how come you can see through these mirrors?" Her humming continued as she painted a silver metallic sheen on the glass. On one side, the silver allowed your reflection to stare back. But on the other, the glass was see-through, like a window. I wasn't a mirror expert, not like Grandma or my great-grandpa, but I broke a mirror when I was cleaning once, and I remember the backside being dark. You couldn't see through it like you could these. Grandma kept humming, and I was hungry, and that room creeped me out. So I shrugged and waved goodbye, reminding her my mom was looking for her. I dismissed the strange room, letting it remain tucked away in the recesses of my memory. Then, one weekend, I got assigned to room cleaning. We all took turns helping out at the inn, but it was more of a chore as I got older. The secrets of the old house held less interest for me. That is until I took a bottle of Windex into a room on the second floor, spraying down one of the many mirrors, and I recognized the silver metal frame, intricately painted cherubs with fang-like teeth and distorted smiles staring back at me. The one-way mirrors. I tried to pull the mirror off the wall to look behind it, but was surprised to find it securely stuck. No matter how hard I tried to pull it off, it wouldn't budge. A cold chill ran down my spine as I recalled the secret room. That was when I realized there were two kinds of people in this family: those who knew and those who didn't. Grandma passed away a couple of years later, but still, I kept her secrets. My family argued about who would take care of the inn. It had been in our family for so long, no one wanted to give it up. But no one wanted to take responsibility for it either. Finally, they came to a compromise and decided to share the duties. So, one of our families would move into the inn each season to take care of the guests and keep Gertrude Inn up and running until someone stepped up and decided to take over the House of Mirrors. It was summer when it was our turn. Mom and Dad claimed a bedroom on the first floor, and though no one wanted to sleep in Grandma's old room, I claimed it greedily. Gertrude Inn had a presence, a sort of sentient awareness, like you could feel her breathing. She tensed and held her breath, and so did I when I crept into the armoire that first night. I palmed the back of the old wardrobe, my hands sweaty as I searched for the secret knob. When I entered Grandma's secret room, it was pitch black. I stumbled around in the dark, seeking out the hanging lamps I remembered briefly from my only previous visit. But in my search, as my hands felt along the walls, I found another doorknob. My heart racing, I slowly twisted the tiny metal handle, the creaking sound like a thunderclap, considering the height of my nerves. My foot padded out ahead, testing the floor, and as both hands pressed against the narrow walls, I discovered a light switch. Though the light cast was dim, like everything else at Gertrude Inn, It was enough. Slowly, I stumbled into the corridor, merely 3 feet wide, between the bedrooms, floors creaking loudly beneath my bare feet. And then I watched in horror through the backs of the mirrors as guests slept the night away. I held every gasp and breath as my brain tried desperately to comprehend what I saw. A shriek tore out of my throat when I came upon a couple having sex, and the man stopped mid-thrust to whisper, "Did you hear that?" To his partner, my hand clasped over my mouth, terrified they'd know I was there, know what hid behind the mirrors. I turned around and ran back to the secret room. I turned off the light, banged my knee against a table in my rush to escape. And when I returned to my new bedroom, I stared at the armoire in screaming silence until the sun came up. It took hours to calm my racing heart. And in that time, I thought back to every interaction I'd ever had with my grandma. All the puzzle pieces and bits of memory I tucked away, slowly clicking into place. Walking over to a mirror, I stared back at my reflection until I no longer felt scared or uncomfortable. The following morning at breakfast, I watched my parents, not knowing, move around the kitchen in blissful ignorance, shaking cereal into bowls and discussing their days over morning coffee. "Mercy, you feeling okay?" Mom placed the back of her hand over my forehead, frowning. I cleared my throat. "Yeah, I'm good. Must have been a little weird to sleep in Grandma's room last night. No one would blame you if you decided to stay in another room. We can rework that one into a guest room." "No." Their eyes widen at my reaction. "Sorry. No, I'm good." Actually, it made me feel closer to her. And, I was thinking, she showed me once how to make the mirrors. I think I'd like to take it over, learn the family business. I shrugged and dug my spoon into the milky cereal, ignoring my parents' tight smiles. They don't want me to become like Grandma, even if they don't know precisely why. What I do know is that Gertrude Inn breathes for me, and I'll keep her secrets, maybe make a few of my own.